Welcome back to Initiating Insight with Sibongile. Today we are talking about sex before marriage or premarital sex, and I am sitting with Mr. Mundunwabo, and we were talking about, before we went on a break, that men seem to be the ones who feel Uguti and they think Uguti they have obligations, and that the women should be the... But why is that? It's just too much pressure on women, isn't it?
Too much pressure, but then also you can look at it from the point of view that it actually gives the woman the position of power of making the final decision.
Okay.
Yes, and if it is done properly, it allows the woman to actually also participate and engage.
Yeah. So are we saying here, Mundu, that if if women say no, there'll never be premarital sex?
Well, you must agree also that the women also have the problem of wanting to engage in premarital sex. Some women want to engage in premarital sex. But then the initiation will always come from the men. But then if the men were following the kind of morals that I'm advocating today, they wouldn't initiate, and the woman wouldn't have to. But then also that women nowadays have say the right to initiate things, and if they do, then the onus comes to the men to actually refuse.
Is there any instant, spiritually that is, perhaps even from the Bible, that says that there shouldn't be sex before marriage?
That is a challenge, because you cannot find in the Bible a distinct part in the Bible that says no premarital sex. As a matter of fact, you find areas in the Bible where there definitely was premarital sex, and doesn't look like the Bible frowned upon it. If you look in Genesis chapter 38, you look at Jude. He actually had sex with his daughter-in-law, who was dressed as a prostitute, and there was no frowning upon it. And you ask yourself why?
Yeah. Places like, let's talk about Judaism versus Christianity, for instance.
Yeah.
Like we say, in Christianity, for instance, I mean, there's really not much that says, especially instinctively, or rather distinctively, that says no sex before marriage. In Judaism, what happens there? What's the practice there?
Well, if you read some books in Judaism, you'll find that there are instances where it is advocated that a person can have at least once a meeting between the people who are prospective bride and groom, and they can meet and get to know each other, and then if one finds the other one repulsive in some sense, then the marriage can be stopped.
Wow. But it's once, you say?
Well, actually, I've read it several times. It says at least once. Now, the at least now says to me that the possibility can be extended.
Exactly.
It can be extended to more times.
Yeah, so uhamba test drive. Yes, so we call it a strategy. It's a test drive.
But also, in a way, it does make sense, because there are lots of people who are just not sexually compatible.
Sure.
And as a result, if they don't know each other, if they go into marriage not knowing each other, they only discover in marriage that they are completely not compatible. So what do you do in cases like that? But then, if from my point of view, as Christians, what we do is that we take them and we teach them how to be compatible with each other. The problem is that quite a lot people who are not compatible with each other, don't get the training of how to deal with it, and eventually the incompatibility just continues and persists.
Oh, can they be trained?
Yes,
if you're
of
not
course.
compatible, can that be eradicated?
Yes, because you can understand how the other person approaches things, and then the other one can understand where you come from. Okay?
Okay.
And understand the needs and how to remedy the inefficiencies here and there.
So it's not really necessary to start to motor test that if it has not happened, then it can be cured or can be helped.
I think whether or not.
But then it is serious.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
it is serious.
Whether, no. But I think the better way is that the people must get married and get proper counseling. It is much better that way than to go on testing and getting all sorts of troubles and getting into all sorts of problems and eventually perhaps not even finding what you're looking for because you don't even know what it is that you're looking for.
But why has it been said then by preachers as if it is actually from the Bible itself? Because naming sasemncane, even before I thought I knew anything about life, I would hear, because I received Christ very, very early in my life, and I would look for the sex before marriage. I'm thinking, and at that time, I used to have this Bible with concordance, so I would go and looking for all this under sex. Is there anything, and I wouldn't necessarily find anything. I'm thinking, and I'm scared to ask a preacher,
yes.
Where is this thing sex before marriage is a sin? Because I'm scared what you have to have sex, what's wrong with you? I'm just merely making a research because I've always been this person who's investigative and who wants to know the truth, but at that time you can't do it because you're thinking, they might think that it's saying for not to have sex, and I just want to know, really.
Yes, the challenge you have is that it is not explicitly mentioned, but in a way it is implied. There's a place where Paul says, if you act unseemingly to a woman, then you must marry her. And the unseemingly seems to explain that something that should not be done, something that should not be done. But then, you look in all religions, in a lot of societies, in a lot of cultures, you find that sex before marriage is actually discouraged.
Let's talk about Samson and Delilah and Ruth and Boaz.
Yeah.
Wasn't there something that happened there? And there was no hullabaloo about it.
Yeah. That's the challenge.
Oh, those were special instances.
That's the challenge, because you don't find any condemnation afterwards, or you don't find even in the New Testament condemnations of those acts. But then those acts are there. Jude's act is there. Ruth and Boaz is there, and Samson's act is there. And Samson is even worse. It was with a foreigner.
Yeah.
A Gentile, a person who was not a Jew.
Sure.
But then it is not exactly discouraged. So that becomes a problem. But then at the end of the day, this becomes, something that is always debatable. And while it is debatable, I'm saying that it's better to err on the side of caution.
Okay, let's take a break. We need to take a break. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Initiating Insight with Sibongile, and I am sitting today with Mr. Ngobo, and we are talking about sex before marriage, or premarital sex, as it were. And before we went on a break, we were talking about erring on the side of caution. Yes. And we've said a lot already, and if you've missed, you're going to have to get your repeat. But we're talking about this today because it is a reality of our society. And umuntu here, Mr. Ngobo, if you like, he says it's better to be cautious. It's better to be safe than sorry, because of a lot of cons that come with premarital sex or sex before marriage. You're saying we should err on the side of caution.
Yeah. If you look at what each parent would prefer for their children, well, if you ask youth, they would want to experiment. They would want to be adventurous. They want to go in there and find out for themselves, because usually the raging hormones and all of that is pushing them. But then if you ask any parent, they probably would say they don't want their child to have sex. Now, I'm saying that if a parent grows up, acquires experience, and grows up, acquires wisdom, that wisdom should apply. That wisdom should be, the guiding light in this matter. To say that if a parent says, I would suggest that you do not have sex. Then that should be heard and listened to. Because I can't think of any parent that would suggest to the child to have sex. Usually, okay, some of them are pushed to accept it because they have very little control. But at the end of the day, most of the parents would rather not have their children having sex.
You know, some people might argue and say, is sex before marriage? Fine, I did everything by the book. Is it before marriage? Which marriage? Because I've been married before. So, manje, is it sex before marriage, like when you get married before the first time, or sex before marriage the second time? Some people are married like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. So, which marriage? You understand my question?
Yes, I do understand your question. But sex with a person you're not married to. That's how we should look at it. Sex with a person you're not married to should be the standard.
But because it doesn't bring any guarantees. Because akusho ukuthi umushada, or if uzoye kucansi nomuntu oshade naye or uzoshada naye ukwenza ukuthi umshado wenu last forever. Uyaphela lo mshado, and then what? So are we saying that and I said, other than just maybe the disease or the stigma that comes with it, is it some type of guarantee of some sort that if you get married to this person without, if virgins get married, then it's guaranteed ukuthi umshado wabo will be legend and be fine, and what's really the fuss about this thing of sex before marriage?
There is absolutely no guarantee. But then, if you get something like, you get the assurance that the person has never slept with another person, that will be precious to the husband and the wife about the partner. And also, if you have been married before, if you start your marriage or start your engagement or your relationship knowing that you had actually applied certain controls to your life, that practice of applying those controls will be carried into the marriage, and you'll be able to control other things in your marriage, and that improves your success of marriage.
But is it really guaranteed? But I suppose you're saying if, ne?
Yes.
If you've put measures to control certain things about your life, then because honestly, really, I think you would hear people saying "Futi marriage is overrated," you know. But I know we're not really talking about that, but we are talking about sex before marriage. So I suppose they are related.
Marriage is not overrated. Let me start there. Marriage is not overrated. There's a lot of benefit in marriage that people don't get because they don't know about. But let's get into the idea of sex before marriage. You see, what I'm saying is that if you can start by agreeing on eliminating certain things, it means that you have a start of working on things together. Okay? And if that practice is started even before you're married, then you can work on things together later on. Now, if you just get into things without, the discussion, the agreements, later on when you get into marriage, that practice will persist. Or might persist. Maybe I should say that.
You do find instances where you've had these discussions, but when you get into marriage, then everything else has changed. You do get such, I think.
Absolutely.
And that's why we are saying, really, life has no guarantees.
No.
Really, life has no guarantees. I suppose what we can do best is what we can do best. So what are we saying about this exactly? Just to conclude, because, at some point we're saying there's nothing that says in the Bible, so we're suggesting, go and groovy, baby. At one point we're saying, restrict yourself, be cautious, put preventative measures. What are we saying to the people out there?
Much as it might be unpopular nowadays, but still it is good advice and it is good wisdom to start to continue with a relationship into marriage and avoid things that might give you problems later in marriage. It's better to go into marriage with a sense of I have started this very well and hope to continue it very well.
African culture, very, very quickly. When you're going to get married to somebody, you take out the dowry. Ukipha malobol.
Yes.
Dowry is like dollar.
Yes.
Ukipha malobol.
Yes.
Does that constitute marriage? Because some people say unkipela malobol, so what's the problem? And I'm going to get married to Muntu anyway, so why don't we just do it anyway?
No. The marriage, according to African culture, I'll tell you about Zulu culture because I'm Zulu.
Very quickly.
Ufanele unqanyiswe, which means that you must be introduced to the family and the ancestors.
But anyway, yeah.
Oh yes.
To kiss.
No. This is Zulu. Sorry, not ukunqamisa, ukucola. Ufanele ucolwe. Sorry, I used the wrong term.
Sure.
Ufanele ucolwe, which means that you must be introduced to the family and the ancestors. And only then can you be said to be fully accepted into the marriage. And Zulu culture frowns upon sex before marriage. That's why they were practiced like ukusoma, which meant that you can play around, but no penetration.
Okay, sure. So we can say, be cautious, and to prevent diseases, we have things like condoms and things like that, but we're not necessarily saying go out there and have fun.
Try to avoid sex before marriage.
Amen. Try to avoid sex before marriage. This is all the time we have for today. Sibongile Mlangeni with Umuntu Ngobo. Until next time, please take care.